Hi guys, welcome to episode 5 of Beers with Brownie. We're an international rugby league YouTube series where we interview our guests and just talk international rugby league about where it's developing and growing around the world. So if you could kindly drop a like and subscribe. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, we've got 100 rugby league balls going out to developing international rugby league nations to help with their development. We didn't want to wait till 1,000, so actually what we're going to do now is for every 100 subscribers, we're sending out 10 balls. So if you can keep subscribing, when we hit the next benchmark, we'll send out another 10 balls until we hit 1,000 subscribers. So guys, please spread the word and support our channel. Thank you. So if by chance we can get to 10,000 subscribers, so I'll need everyone sharing and spreading the word. We're going to fund a domestic competition in the Solomon Islands where we can provide them with all the equipment that they need and further develop the game internationally. So please guys, spread the word. Hey guys, I'd just like to welcome our guest for this episode, former Parramatta Eels, North Sydney Bears, Northern Eagles and West Tigers legend, Mick Buettner. Welcome to the show, Mick.
Phil, thanks for being here.
Okay, so Mick and I, we were colleagues at OzTag for the past 2 years. Mick was also the general manager for the NRL National Youth Under-20s competition and was also on the NRL Judiciary. So Mick, my first question, so you've had plenty of great teammates and plenty of great work colleagues over the years. So who was your best and why was I?
How did I know that was coming, Phil? How did I know you've got the best dad jokes in the world? Sorry, the worst dad jokes in the world. And there's another example of that. Mate, you're right. I've been very fortunate having played the game since I was 18 and then worked in the game immediately after finishing and have worked with numerous people, worked with and alongside and against a lot of great people. And I'm very fortunate to be a part of the game. And then in recent years, happened to join OzTag and thoroughly enjoyed my time there at the moment, where I act as Director of Coaching and Development. And it's a game that is continually growing and certainly has that links to the rugby league, which I thoroughly enjoy.
Well, Mick, I can certainly say, when I started working with you, we had a bit of the dream team combination going. We'd set up the competitions on that little buggy and pack it all up and whatnot. It was a pleasure getting to work with you and know you. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Pleasure.
Okay, so as we know guys, every episode we like to support a beer that supports rugby league. So for this episode we've got Carlton Dry, and Carlton Dry is the official beer of the State of Origin series this year. So cheers Mick.
Cheers Brownie, beautiful.
Okay guys, so as we all know again, every episode I like to support an international rugby league team around the world, and today I'm supporting the Greek Rugby League. So the Greece men's team have qualified for their first ever World Cup this year, and they just recently launched their first ever women's team. So for everyone involved in Greek Rugby League, all the best and onward and upward. So Mick, my first question, so how did you come to love rugby league?
I guess it was probably through my family, and when I say that, I guess probably my grandparents, my aunties and uncles. My mum is one of 9, so it was a big family, and there was generally our main supporters in the household and a couple of South Sydney supporters. So, my first memory of rugby league was the 1980 grand final, that try by Steve Gearin. I think Greg Buettner put the kick up and Steve Gearin runs through and scores that try back in 1980. So that was my first recollection of any sort of football. And I started playing when I was 8 years old, come through and didn't really make any rep teams or anything like that, had a bit of speed. And back in those days we played on full-size fields, so speed was obviously a big advantage. And then I basically went from there to started playing rep footy with Parramatta in the SG Ball, which was the under-16s at the time. The following year I played Jersey Flag, got called up to under-21s reserve grade, and the following season I made my first grade debut. So things really happened really quickly for me from about 16 onwards, and it was a bit of a shock to me, and 2 years later there I was making my debut for Parramatta. And we were saying, Mick, off camera that your junior club was the Canley Vale Cougars, is that right? Canley Vale Cougars, yes, the Canley Vale Cougars, that was my junior club. I also played with Canley Vale Diggers, that was the first club I played with. But Canley Vale Cougars, Michael Vella also played there, and Brian Jackson, who used to play centre for the Parramatta Eels, was also a player that come through that club. A strong club, and it was one of those things that, I just enjoyed my footy when I was younger. Even as a 16-year-old, I was still playing second division with my mates. So I never thought of rugby league as a career as such. And then things started to happen, and I ended up making the Australian Schoolboys side in '91, which was a really great experience for me, and I guess it probably gave me a springboard into what I could look forward to the following season.
Well, Mick, that leads me into my next question. We are an International Rugby League themed YouTube series, and you mentioned that you made the Australian Schoolboys in 1991. So can you tell us, who did you play, and what was that like as an experience?
Yeah, look, it was great. I guess we were very fortunate. At the end of 1990, I knew that the Australian Schoolboys side was going on a tour to England at the end of the year in '91. I actually said to my mates at school, I said, I'm going to make that side. And I had no right to say that because, in all seriousness, I hadn't really done a great deal in terms of schoolboy footy. I hadn't made any sort of serious rep teams. So, but as it turned out, I ended up making the squad and ended up captaining the side to England. So I was a tour to England. We played 3 tests over there, which was fantastic. We also played a lot of the lesser towns, similar to the old Kangaroo tour,
right?
Where we go around and play the local teams.
Yeah. But
it was just a great experience. I was very fortunate to have that experience, and some of the players I got the opportunity to play with. A couple of my Bears teammates, Josh Stewart, Craig Makepeace, Danny Williams, who also played at the Melbourne Storm and won a premiership there. Damien Chapman, who was at the Dragons, and he was I think at the time he was the Commonwealth Bank Junior Player of the Year. So it was a side. Roger Best, who is Bradman Best's father, who plays with the Newcastle Knights now.
Right.
Got to play alongside him. It was certainly a side that we had the majority of our players go on and play first grade. I would suggest probably of the 20 that were in the squad, I'd probably suggest 12 to 15 of them went on and ended up playing first grade. So it was a really strong side. We went over there undefeated and did our job, and it was a great tour. And like I said previously, it sort of gave me the springboard or the motivation to really consider rugby league as a career option for me, with a little bit of unknown as to what that meant.
So Mick, a year later, you go on to debut for the Parramatta Eels, and you end up winning the Everett Growth Rookie of the Year award. Tell us what was 1992 like for you?
I probably won the Rookie of the Year because there was no one else who was a rookie, so that was okay. I'm not going to knock back the prize, but look, it's an absolute honour to win that award. Eric Growth was actually, believe it or not, Eric Growth was the first footballer who came to my under-8s. I started under-8s. He came to the under-8s presentation day and handed our trophies out. So
wow,
that was
almost great.
Yeah, it was amazing how the universe works. And but look, mate, I made my debut. I remember at the end of 91, I was thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? I want to start the season in under 21s and give myself the best shot to go as far as I can. As it turned out, and I still remember this day, I was planning to play for against the Magpies in 21s. Got a call that morning to say you've got to play reserve grade.
Right.
And I've got to say I was absolutely shitting myself because I was watching these guys run at each other. This is grown men back in the day and I was an 18-year-old little boy.
Yeah.
And they were running and bashing the hell out of each other. And as it turned out, I ended up scoring 3 tries that game. But I think it was through fear alone because I just wanted to run and get away from them. So I ended up scoring 3 tries, and then I ended up starting the season in reserve grade, which was beyond my expectations. Peter Sterling ended up getting injured in round 3, which led to his retirement. Round 4, I made my debut. So my claim to fame is that I replaced Peter Sterling.
Wow.
And I'm going to run with that. Sure, I didn't play halfback at the time, but nevertheless, I made my debut, and I had the opportunity to play alongside some quality players throughout my time. But one in particular, Brett Kenny, who was an absolute Eels legend.
Yeah.
To have that opportunity to play alongside him and have him as a mate now is something I'd certainly cherish and very grateful for to have that opportunity.
Yeah, one of the greatest of all time, Brett Kenny, fantastic player. So Mick, you played a number of clubs throughout your career, and you finished your career with the West Tigers, and you played 2 years under the great Tim Sheens, who was a former Australian Kangaroos coach. What was that like as an experience?
Look, it was a great experience, and I was at the back end of my career. I'd played 11 seasons in first grade, went to West Tigers, and unfortunately it wasn't great 2 years for me in terms of what I did on the field. I'd sort of sustained an injury to my knee, and that sort of put me out for 12 months. So I really only played over the 60 odd games throughout that season, or whatever it was, 50 odd games. I only played 16 games, so that was disappointing. I do know that throughout that time, Benji Marshall was there, Robbie Farah, and I did teach Benji Marshall how to flip pass and how to sidestep. So I think he did okay at that.
Well, I've seen interviews where he said, I owe Mick Buettner everything.
Yeah, I know how that rolls. And it's a shame I only had 2 seasons with him, because I don't know how good he could have been if I actually had to spend more time with him. And I always say to the boys that I dug the well from him, because back in the following season, they ended up winning the comp.
Yeah.
So I dug the well, they just drank from it. And I'm going to run with that. But Tim Sheens, great coach. He knew his stuff. He'd had a lot of success at Canberra. Obviously, he had the success at West Tigers. And just a really good operator. I remember meeting him for the first time, and he basically, whether I was interested in coming to the West Tigers, and he basically, for an hour and a half, he basically told me the whole plan for the next 5 years as to what his plan was for the club and where they were going to go, and that just got me really interested. And I went, I don't want to be a part of this place. And it's a shame that the knee injury happened, because I would have loved to have. If I had played a lot more games, which I sort of prided myself on, then I would have got close to that 300 mark, and the following year would have been a chance for me to actually try and reach that milestone. But that's by the by, it didn't eventuate, but certainly, a great experience under Tim Sheens. And I've had plenty of good coaches in my time, but he was certainly up there with the best of them.
Well, Mick, that was my next question. You played under a lot of wonderful coaches, all great coaches. Do any stand out in your mind?
Look, probably the 2 years I had at Parramatta with Brian Smith, 2001, 2002. We were very fortunate. 01, we made the grand final and had a bit of bad luck there in terms of the grand final. But nevertheless, I played 9 seasons of first grade, went to Parramatta, and I actually learned how to play footy. I learned how to catch the ball, I learned how to pass, I learned how to tackle, I learned how to run with the ball. And all those things sound really silly, but I understood why you do what you do. And he enabled me to understand that. And I probably wish, and again, no disrespect to the previous coaches I had, I actually just wish that I had him earlier in my career, because I think I could have been a better player, or at least understood the game more and what I needed to do in a team environment to work. Mate, a funny story, we actually, Brian Smith always had a scoring system in attack and defence. Yeah. So my first trial match I ended up scoring -72 in defence.
Wow.
And I didn't miss a tackle, right? So it just gives you a bit of an idea of how far behind I was in terms of my understanding of team structures, defensive structures, what I was doing in the defensive line or what I wasn't doing, and how detrimental that was to my team. I obviously improved slowly, but I got there. But he without doubt was the best coach that I've had, and just gave me a real insight into understanding the game more.
Excellent. So Mick, throughout your whole career, was there a standout player that you just loved playing with?
I was pretty fortunate. There was, again, I've had numerous players that I've played with, and numerous great players, but probably once I went to the Bears and had the ability to run off a player like Jason Taylor. And we ended up having 6 seasons together, 4 at the Bears, a year at the Northern Eagles, and the year at Parramatta.
Yep.
So we had 6 seasons together. His style of play suited me. He would go to the line. He'd have the big back rowers who were, trying to hit the gaps, and I'd be running the sweep line out the back there, which was sort of my style as a running 5'8". And when you got the likes of a Gary Larson, a Billy Moore, or a David Fairley hitting those gaps, they certainly attract defenders, which suddenly opened up the gap for me to go through. And it just suited my style of play. He controlled the game, he managed the game, and he just enabled me to do what I was good at, and that was running. And I think our balance worked out well for both of us. So without doubt, I would say his style of play suited me, and I think my style of play suited him.
I just remember as a kid watching games at North Sydney Oval, and Jason Taylor just had his pinpoint accuracy on his passes and his kicking game, and it was great to watch.
Mate, it was no fluke that he played as many games. He played 192 games consecutively without missing a game, and that was a credit to him in terms of his fitness levels, his commitment to his training, his stretching, the time that he would put into his kicking. He was obviously one of the great kickers in our game. That was no fluke. And when you consider the size of him, I remember at Parramatta, for the first time in his whole career, bench press 100 kilos.
Wow.
Right, and that was his last season of footy. Right, so that was a big milestone for him. The rest of the time, I think he was just bench pressing cotton buds and things like that.
The old accountant's body.
Yes, correct, exactly right. He was the original accountant's body, mate, I've got to tell you. But yeah, great player and obviously suited my game.
So Mick, out of throughout your whole career, like who was your toughest player to mark against?
I think there was, different times. I played 5'8" and I played centre, and when you look back at my era, there was plenty of great players that played in those positions. I remember playing against a Canberra side down in Canberra, and we lost 68-0 at Parramatta. And Big Mal Meninga running. I think I've still got the scars from his boots on my chest, from him running over the top of me. The likes of coming up against Laurie Daly, Brad Fittler, Darren Lockyer at the back end of my career. Those players there, Kevin Walters, just players like that who you had to mark up against and challenge yourself against. They were the best of the best, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But Terry Hill was always a big challenge for a number of reasons. He was big, he was strong, he was fast, but also he's a fair sledger too. So you knew you were going to cop it in all ways. And he didn't let up. He was unrelenting, and again, he was tough. He'd run the ball hard, and you knew you were in for a battle. And I guess other players, when you look at the likes of Paul McGregor, who he was big and strong, but he also had that amazing footwork. So that ability. Steve Renouf, who he had to mark up against, and he had that out ball where he would get it and have that palm. There's so many good players that I was fortunate enough to play against and with, and it's certainly an era there where people can look back on fondly and go, you can rattle off name after name after name. Langer, Ricky Stewart. I mentioned some earlier, but
so many great
names that just rattle off the tongue so easily, and to have that ability to play alongside or against those guys, that was fantastic. I'd do it all again tomorrow.
So Mick, let's talk about the National Under-20s competition making a return. So you were the general manager of the inaugural Under-20s competition. Yep. What are your thoughts on bringing it back?
Look, I love the concept of the National Youth Competition. I don't know whether Under-20s is the right age. When I first took on that role, I had my concerns about whether that was going to be the right age. Because I think there's a big gap between what you do as a 20-year-old and when you develop as a footballer. Yeah. And I think maybe 22 or maybe 23 might have been the right age.
Well, remember back in the day, the President's Cup was the under.
It was under 23s and it was reserve grade. And look, let's be honest, people don't have time to come and watch. As much as they talk about, I'd love to go watch 3 grades. Yeah. I guarantee you, they don't have time to do it these days.
We live in a different era.
Correct. Work was Monday to Friday. Saturday and Sunday meant you went to the footy. Okay, footy is now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. Right? People's lives are Monday through to Sunday. Right? And we're so consumed with our kids and taking them to sport and all those other things. It's a different world now. So we're never going to go back to 3 grades, right? For the simple fact that financially the game can't support it either. Right? And there's no way we can do that. I don't know whether we probably have enough players to be able to do that, but and again, you've got to be mindful of the fact that back in the day it was 12 teams. We've now got 16 teams. They're travelling interstate, overseas.
A lot more expenses.
Correct. There's a whole range of different factors that come into play as to why you couldn't have. But the concept behind the National Youth Comp, I think there is merit in it, having an affiliation again with the game. And I think fans would love to see the young emerging players come through. And again, I think it also gives that strong competition for those kids that, there's 30 players in a NRL squad now. And when you look at that, there's a lot of players that are missing out on a weekly basis getting that strong competition. Yep. Right, they've got to go back to New South Wales Cup or Queensland Cup, and which may not be as strong as what a second tier competition will be. So I think there's some merit in it. I think there's obviously financially whether it's viable, and that's the key to the whole thing. To be honest with you, the game is a business now, and we can't get away from that fact. So it's important that we monitor that and ensure that it all stacks up. But I think the concept is on the money.
So Mick, you played Origin for New South Wales under the late great Tommy Raudonikis. Tell us what was that like?
Oh, look, mate, I guess it's every boy's dream to represent their state, or if they get the opportunity to do, especially in Origin, and then to represent their country. So to be in that position and get called up was fantastic. Tommy was obviously Tommy was a larrikin. Tommy was a character. He was
Larger than life.
correct. You know what? I don't think I'd learn a hell of a lot in terms of tactical or how to play the game. But what I learned was that how you rip in and how your spirit is so important. And
it was all about passion, Tico, wasn't it?
It was all about Tico, and it was all about passion, and that's what he thrived on, and that's what made him the type of player he was. And when we look back on his career, and a lot of people probably underestimate how good his career was. 230 odd first grade games, 29 tests for Australia, 24 games for New South Wales. Like, it's an impressive record, and he's so revered by everybody that come in contact with him, be it as a player, be it as an official, be it just a guy down the pub who catches up with Tommy for a beer. That's who he was, and he brought that to that Origin squad. And so I come into the third game. We'd won the series. We'd won the first two games. So the third time, my experience, I've got to say, wasn't that great, because I got on with after about 20 minutes and ended up doing a medial ligament, which saw me out for the next 6 weeks out for the Bears. But it was the famous Scuttlelog game, and I remember leading up to the game and how that all played out, and the talk in and around it, and there's plenty of funny stories about it. But I think one of the viewers spoke about.
Yeah, so a friend of the show, Troy Warner, has tweeted us. He's asked us to ask you, where were you when the cattle dog call came out?
Well, mate, luckily for the Queenslanders, I wasn't on the field, because I would have been running out the stadium by then. But no, mate, I was on the sideline and just seeing it all unfold, and it was amazing that the call come out, and the boys responded accordingly, and so did Jamie Goddard apparently. We got a couple of good ones on Joey.
Matty Johns always likes to remind him about that.
Yeah, no, exactly right. But mate, look, it's great to be a part of that. Yeah, it's probably one of the most famous incidents in Origin. And, to have played one game of Origin and for that to be my experience is, pretty hard to believe. Yeah, it's bloody awesome. And to have Tommy there as a coach was, fantastic. So, mate, I look back on it with, great memories, and probably the only thing that stopped me from playing more games was ability. So, so like I said, there's plenty of good players that were there, mate, and I was just grateful that I had that one chance.
So, Mick, in 1996, you represented the Australian Kangaroos, playing against Papua New Guinea, where you scored 2 tries. Tell us about that. Yeah, look, it was a great experience. We actually got to play over there in PNG, and that's their national sport over there, and it was just unbelievable to see how fanatical they were about the game, their passion for the game, how much they just wanted to touch or be involved with the side. Even when we went training, the number of players or people around the bus, just trying to get a hand on us or whatever it may be, was just phenomenal. And they're playing a test match and scored 2 tries. I actually got held up for a third. So I remind my kids these days that I've got a 200% strike rate playing for Australia. Nice.
And it would have been nice to get that third one, because I don't know whether anybody has got a 300% strike rate playing for Australia. So I was a bit filthy that I got held up for that last try. But nevertheless, look, I scored 2 tries and had a great experience. I think we ended up winning 52-6 or something along those lines. And again, got the play alongside the likes of Andrew Johns and Jeff Tuvey, which I also played at Northern Eagles. Spud Carroll, Paul Harrigan, those type of guys that I certainly looked up to when I was younger, and to be alongside them in a green and gold jersey was phenomenal.
Well, all the viewers out there, definitely put Papua New Guinea on your bucket list. Mick, I was quite lucky. At the last World Cup, I was working for the USA Hawks, where we had to go and play in Port Moresby, and I'd never experienced anything like it in my life. It was like our team were rock stars. Like you say, the bus had kids running for miles after the bus, and we had 12 guys from the States that just play amateur level footy, and they were there signing autographs, getting photos for half an hour after every training session, and they just thought, wow, how good is this? So definitely, guys, get yourself to Papua New Guinea for a game. It's an experience of a lifetime. So Mick, before COVID hit, you're in discussions with the German Rugby League about playing for Germany. How did that all come about, and how do you qualify?
How did it come about? Well, it came about through you, Phil. Basically, you gave me the heads up that Germany were playing Netherlands, over in the Netherlands, and I told you about my heritage. My dad was actually born in Germany, and I said, I don't still feel fit enough to play, and would there be an opportunity to do so? And you explored the options, and it was there was some interest there, which was good. and you were going to be my manager and sort of sort out a deal for me.
We were going to do the media release at the Lowen Brow at the Rocks.
That's right, exactly right. We're going to make it happen. Me and my German out, what do they call it? The Ludenhausen or Liedenhausen?
Yeah.
Right, it would have been a pretty sight anyway. But yeah, I would have loved the opportunity, and unfortunately COVID hit and it didn't eventuate. But look, who knows? Maybe later this year, or if the world does reopen again after COVID and the opportunity arises, then yeah, by all means, I'd certainly put my hand up. Look, I didn't tackle when I was playing, so I'm not about to start tackling now. So at 47, I'd love to give it a crack, and I don't know whether that's still viable, but I'd still enjoy myself. I'd still play Oztag now and get myself relatively fit, so I'd certainly run around and have a crack. I
was going to say, Mick, so when we were at Oztag together, you used to do 100 burpees every day, or you're still doing it, so tell the viewers what's behind that?
Look, I just started in the match review committee when I was with Michael Hodson. He told me that Eric Gross Jr. was doing 100 burpees a day. I said, hey, I'll give it a challenge, give it a bit of a go, and clearly everybody hates doing burpees, we go down and hit the ground, and I just said, it's more a mental thing than anything else. It wasn't about the physical thing. And so I started doing 100 burpees a day, and probably about 3 or 4 months into it, my dad passed away, and I sort of kept doing it throughout that period. It just took my mind away from what was happening and whatever else. So it was a good distraction for me, that week during the funeral and all those things. So just one of those things that I just kept doing, and I sort of, after all that happened, I sort of said to myself that I'd have to come up with a good reason as to why I stopped. And 1,156 days later, I haven't found a reason to stop yet. So wow. I'm still going. And on day 1,000, I actually punched out 1,000 burpees.
Wow. Just
for a charity thing. I do a bit of stuff with Pass It On clothing.
Yeah.
That took 1 hour and 40 minutes, which was pretty physically demanding, but I got through it, which was okay.
You would have slept well that night.
Yeah, I certainly did. Yeah, it was a tough day, but I got through it. But yeah, so that's my 10 minutes that I take for myself, and get those 100 burpees done. It's not the physical thing, it's just about the mental thing now, and just enable myself to give myself that 10 minutes a day.
Excellent, Mick. Well, being an International Rugby League themed series, are you a fan of International Rugby League and seeing the game grow around the world?
Oh, most definitely. I love the fact that, what has happened with Tonga and Samoa and their progression, and, to see that Australia is not the most dominant nation anymore, and that they're certainly going to be tested when they take on other nations. It's great to see, and I think that's a reflection of our society here in Australia, that we have such a vast multicultural society that, and the game is growing. And I think you've had Taz Materi on here. I think he's done an amazing job.
Yeah.
And it's been a job that he's stuck at for some 20, 30 years, and he just believed in it, and it's now. We're seeing the fruits of his hard work, and he's to be complimented for that. But mate, I love the fact that we have the World Cup, and there's nations there that are really competitive, and they're gaining confidence, and they're improving their skill set, and the coaches are, we've got quality coaches now that are putting in the time and effort to these international teams. So mate, I love the international game. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's a great reward for players at the end of the season of what is a very tough season in the NRL, to represent their country, their culture, and their families. So, mate, big tick for me every time.
Did you hear recently about the new professional competition in America?
No, I wasn't aware that they've got one there as well. So
yeah, so...
do they need a player at all?
Well...
have you got any contacts?
Got a few contacts, so I might have to put you in touch, Mick. Yeah. So, Mick, what is the best outcome for International Rugby League in 2021? Obviously, with COVID, it's very uncertain. Hopefully the World Cup goes ahead, but say it doesn't, what's the best outcome for International Rugby League?
Look, I think probably to see at least a couple of teams play against each other, maybe Australia and New Zealand, maybe a tri-series of some sort.
Yeah.
We still have the Fijian side that play in the New South Wales Cup at the moment. So there's that ability, especially in the South Pacific, we've got that ability to travel, and hopefully that'll improve as the year goes on. Whether it means we have like a mini World Cup where it's Australian-based players can form a team of some sort, based on their heritage. But ultimately, I think it's great for fans to see and to support their nations. And we've seen this out at Campbelltown, we've seen it out in Penrith. When the teams like the Tonga and Samoa play out there, and Fiji, they certainly get behind it. So for me, you know, the bigger and better the international game grows, the bit better it's going to be for rugby league.
And Mick, I'll end it here. You know, if you do end up playing for Germany, I don't think anyone can say they played for Australia and Germany in rugby league, so it'll be a world first. So good luck with that, and it's been a pleasure having you on, and thanks for your time, Mick, and all the best.
Cheers, Phil. Appreciate it, mate.